The public interest is very much ruled by media. We are informed and engaged in conflict and incidences which are reported by the media. Present, it is mostly Ukraine and Gaza. Wars with an unbelievable human suffering. There is no space or room left in our media, in our hearts or minds for other or more conflicts. We continue to buy fruits and vegetables unlawfully labeled grown in Morocco, or fish unlawfully caught at the shores of Western Sahara. And we continue that colonized countries is a part of the past. We are not doing that out of ignorance or cold-hearted, but of lack of information. The situation in Western Sahara and the refugee camps is close to disaster now. Humanitarian aid is shrinking, and the stocks of the World Food Programme are almost finished. Very few people are aware of the extremity of the situation for the Sahrawi people. Therefore, I'm so glad to see you all here today, taking interest in Western Sahara. Western Sahara needs a lot of ambassadors, and I hope all of you will become one today. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, good morning and very warm welcome to this seminar. My name is Gabi Björnsson. I'm the chair of Artikel 2. Together with Björk och Frihet and the Svenska Västsahara Committee, we host today's seminar. Artikel 2 is a non-profit organization that has advocated for the self-determination since the 1970s, the self-determination of the Sahrawi people since the 1970s. Last year, we changed the name from Emmaus Stockholm, which many of you are more familiar with, to Artikel 2. But we are still the same organization with the same values and are still invested to work for and advocate for human rights and sustainability. After having listened to our distinguished speakers, I hope you will support our work and become a member of Artikel 2. My colleague Jannike will show you how and assist you. As a member of Artikel 2, you will be invited to our annual meeting, the 29th of May this year, and you will have the opportunity to meet Senja Bashir. She is the Polisario's representative in Sweden and Norway. She will give a speech at our annual meeting and inform us about the latest development in the Western Sahara and the refugee camps. Once again, very welcome to this seminar. We have a very interesting and inspiring hour ahead of us. Now I will hand over to very welcome. I hand over to Sinan Fena, who will is the program manager of Article 2, and he will present our speakers and guide us through the seminar. Thank you very much.
Yes, so welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you here. Our speakers today, we have two of them. The first one is a great honor to present. It's Asria Taleb Mohamed, who is a Sahrawi human rights defender. And she has been active for over a decade in Norway, where she's based now advocating for the Sahrawi cause. And you are a very experienced speaker. She has had over 1,000 speaking events, and yeah, it's a great honor to have you. Welcome. And we are also honored by having Professor Stephen Zunes here, all the way from San Francisco. Dr. Zunes is a very prominent political analyst and an expert in Middle Eastern politics, Western Sahara, and nonviolent methods. And we are very happy to have you here. Welcome, Dr. Zunes. Ready? Yeah. So let me start off with you immediately, Asria. We don't have the time to dig in all the history of Western Sahara, but I would like to know if you could, share with your personal and your family's experience growing up in the refugee camps in Algeria, and why, for instance, how was it growing up there, and also why is your family still located, for instance, in the refugee camps in Algeria?
The microphone is on?
I hope so.
Yes, it's on. Okay. I'm so happy to be back here to Sweden, or as Norwegian says, our cousins, about Sweden. And I'm also very happy because for the first time someone actually says my name correct in Arabic. Al-Asri, I'm like in Norway, Astrid, I'm like, yeah, okay, so I'm very happy to be here. Where to start? It's very easy and at the same time complicated question, but let me start with telling you a story. I was born and I grew up in the Sahrawi refugee camps, and I studied there and I grew up there, so I have been only in Europe for the last decade. And can you imagine knowing that actually that my family, they was forced to flee from their country, Western Sahara, to the neighbor country, Algeria, but I never actually asked my mom or my grandmother the story. And I don't know why. Maybe something psychological. You don't wanna know, but I never asked. And of course, you bring a Norwegian with you at home. And so the last March, I was together with delegation from Norway, from youth parties. And one of them, he just asked my aunt, how was it, to flee from Western Sahara to Algeria? And then my aunt started telling the story. And she said, in October in 1975, when Morocco invaded Western Sahara, they were in their city, normal, as you are now in Stockholm. And all of a sudden, Morocco invaded, and then they have to leave all of a sudden, like immediately. And then my aunt said something that actually stayed with me. And I think for you guys, you work with the refugees and you understand. She said, I thought it would be only one night and we will be back the next year. And I guess this is the story of every single refugee, whether you are from Palestine or from another place. Because today, Sudan is not only one night, we are almost 50 years in this conflict. And then she was talking about how they had to run in fear because of the Moroccan bombard of the Sahrawis. They left only wearing their malhfa, which is very thin. It's not enough, as a cover. They had no food. And you will never also understand how harsh was this journey if you've never been to the desert. It's not a green and water as you have it in Sweden. So they had to walk. It's not only for days, but for weeks. Can you imagine that? And then she said, you see women who lost their babies because they were pregnant because of, the anxiety, the stress, cold. She said, either they have to dig, to cover themselves with malhfas, and some people got lost, of course, of direction. But the more personal story for me is that my aunt said, that my mom was having my older siblings, and she could not carry them or, walking. And in the end, my mom started saying, anyone who wants a daughter? Anyone who wants a daughter? And when my aunt telling this story, I just turned to my mom and I said, seriously? You were going to give away Metu, like the name of my sister? And my mom said, yeah, it was exactly like that. And who am I to judge you, as a mom or as a sister would say, why would you do that? But we don't know. And this is what's happening in Palestine, other place, the sacrifice. But that's the story why the family. Morocco invaded Western Sahara, and unfortunately, the rest of the world really didn't care. And since there, this has been the story of Sahrawis. They are forgotten, not much attention about the media. If you have not been to the camps, I really invite you to be there. It's located in the middle of the desert. I know some people don't like to say isolated, but it is isolated. And the desert is beautiful, but not this type of desert where we are, because from Iraq maybe, or you've been, some desert, but impossible to grow any food. It's very dry. People, when they are in their 60s, they will start having a lung problem because of the dust. But that's, maybe I spoke too long.
No,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Zunes, you're a prominent political analyst when it comes to issues like Western Sahara and Israel and Palestine. And in 2020, the Trump administration actually recognized the Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara. And so far, the Biden administration hasn't revoked that. And according to your own expertise in this issue, how do you see the future unfolds when it comes to the U.S. policy in relation to Western Sahara?
Yeah. It's very unfortunate. I mean, the United States, of course, prides itself in what President Biden repeatedly says is the support for the rules-based international order. The rules-based international order, he says this repeatedly in reference to Ukraine. He talks about how no country can unilaterally change international boundaries. He can talk about how no country can expand its territory by force. And this is the principle, supposedly, as to why the United States has been leading the international community in a challenging Russian aggression against Ukraine and their illegal annexation of Crimea and the Donbass region. And yet when it comes to U.S. allies, it's a very different story. I mean, it was bad enough that he's upheld Trump's recognition of Israel's illegal annexation of the Golan region of Syria, but he's talking. The United States is still recognizing Morocco's illegal annexation of an entire country, and a country that is a full member state of the African Union. I mean, the United States is basically on record supporting the takeover of one sovereign African state by another. And if you look at most maps, you'll see Western Sahara as a separate country, or maybe it'll be hash marks or a dotted line or something that shows the unique status. All U.S. government maps, no demarcation whatsoever. It's all Morocco, all one country. And in State Department reports, and make a distinction, between, say, Israel, West Bank, Gaza Strip. Again, it's just Morocco. They're frank about the human rights abuses, but this is an internal Moroccan issue in the views of the U.S. government. And this is, many of us assumed that Biden would reverse this, as he did a number of Trump's rather impetuous decisions. This decision he made only in the final weeks of his presidency, and he had criticism from not only career people in the State Department, but both not just Democrats, but many Republicans as well in the U.S. Congress, and as well as internationally. I mean, even France, which has been Morocco's, probably the most important, biggest backer of Morocco, even they thought that was going too far because it was such a dangerous precedent in terms of international law. And so it's unclear why Biden's doing that. I mean, the Trump's recognition was in return for Morocco formally recognizing Israel. So perhaps he was afraid that if he rescinded U.S. recognition of the takeover of Western Sahara, Morocco might rescind its recognition of Israel, then Biden would be criticized for abandoning Israel or something like that. But I think it's also, I guess, again, underscores that, as we've seen in terms of Israel and Palestine, the Biden administration, though they have been relatively progressive in domestic policy, does take a pretty hard line in international affairs. It does not really respect human rights or international law. And we've seen the vetoes of the United Nations and other things involving Israel and Palestine, and Biden was one of the right-wing minority of Democrats in the Senate when he was head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to support the invasion of Iraq. So I think it is part of, unfortunately, the fact that we've seen this throughout U.S. history, unfortunately, that the United States, despite the rhetoric upholding international law and certain universal liberal values, when it comes to actual practice, we're willing to make exceptions for strategic allies. And of course, what this has done, the United States still says, oh, we respect the efforts of the Secretary General's Special Representative, and we respect the talks going forward. Morocco has even hardened its attitude even more, saying, hey, we got the recognition of the world's most powerful country. Why do we need to compromise? So, so despite giving lip service to a peace process, again, this is really definitely set back efforts for the rights of the Sahrawis for self-determination.
And a follow-up question. I mean, it's not a secret that the Moroccans have ambitions of a greater Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that this move of actually recognizing the annexation of Western Sahara can lead to even more severe consequences regionally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Western Sahara is just part of Le Grand Maroc, Greater Morocco, which includes pretty much all of Mauritania. And Western Algeria, and even some smaller parts of other countries in the Greater Maghreb, and we know that Morocco actually invaded Algeria in 1963, right after independence from France. I've been to the Moroccan Foreign Ministry, and not only do their maps show Western Sahara as part of Morocco, the eastern border, there's no definitive line. Which shows, Morocco still has irredentist ambitions. And what's troubling about some of the recent arms transfers to Morocco from the United States is they do seem to be designed, not just in terms of a counterinsurgency war in occupied Western Sahara, but in a more conventional war against Algerian forces. Now, I don't think the United States would necessarily support another Moroccan invasion, but that we are, in a sense, providing the means and not doing anything to discourage Morocco's greater regional ambitions.
Thank you. Asria, next year will mark half a century of the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara. What would you say are the biggest challenges for the Sahrawi people living in refugee camps?
Let me start with, I think the biggest challenge, and it has been actually for a long time, is that the lack of media attention to Western Sahara. Years ago, I was here in Sweden, and I was in, what do you call it, Riksdag, like the parliament, yeah. And I remember that chairperson, I don't remember his name, but I still remember he's sitting in the sofa, leaning like this, and he said, look, we politicians, we open the newspaper, and we follow. It's influencing us, and there is nothing about Western Sahara. So where the media goes the aid, goes the political action, and the support. The challenge, so that's the main challenge. When you are totally under the radar of the media and NGOs, it will impact the camps. But let me start, for example, about health. Health sector is very important in the camps. And that's basically the refugee camps. they are totally or almost are dependent on humanitarian aid. This means that all the essential things that refugees need, like food, water distribution, medicine, it's coming from humanitarian aid. But this humanitarian aid has been for 50 years. And guys, I just want you to close your eyes for a second and just think, to be in the same place for 50 years, what does it do for you as a human being? Mental health, we don't talk about it. And culturally, we don't talk about it either. But what does it do of these refugees? But what does it do for humanitarian aid? For the last years, it has been decreasing on humanitarian aid. Every year is less and less and less humanitarian aid. And there are a few reasons for that. First, there is the donor fatigue. So basically, the conflict has been there for a long time, so just less and less aid. Second, we see that there are other humanitarian crises, and especially when they are in Europe, like, for example, what's happening in Ukraine. That's totally impact the aid to the refugee camps. And in March as well, I was in a meeting with the World Food Program, and he said that. He said, you know, when we go and have meetings with our donors in Europe, they are basically hinting for us, now we will use our resources in Europe. So imagine when you are already forgotten, but now it's even more forgotten. And we see that, I know you guys, when you go to the shop to buy, you notice that in your money, but how the prices are getting up and up, and that's also, in fact, the humanitarian aid. So the situation now that you have in the camps, over 88% of the refugees who are at risk for food, that they are food insecure or at the risk of food insecurity. You have over 50% of women between the age of 14 to 45. They have anemia as a lack of iron deficiency. Sorry, you are English speaker. It must be torture for you to be with us. It's iron deficiency. And most of the death among women, especially pregnant women, is really linked birth with the iron. And for me, it's heartbreaking, because something you could actually prevent by giving aid. And iron deficiency is common between women, even in Sweden. But you eat broccoli and you take tablets and it's fine. But with Sahrawis, we don't have it. So I have it myself, and I still take tablets until today. And then you have the acute global malnutrition among kids. 11% of kids between the age of 6 months to 49 months that they have that. And then, of course, if you have been to the refugee camps, there is poor diet, there is a lack of awareness about nutrition, what is best. So you have in one side actually malnutrition, in another side you have obesity, because of the lack of understanding of nutrition. That's about the health. And let me tell you one thing. We say we are dependent on humanitarian aid, but it's not fact anymore. So the refugees, they are left on their own. They have to be creative to find a way to produce or to buy their food. And one example, my best friend, she worked in the health, and she was among the committee for fighting COVID-19. You know what happened at COVID-19? The moment it happened, all the humanitarian organizations, they took out their members from the camps, and they left the refugees on their own. Deal with it. And that's also very scary factors to say we are dependent on humanitarian aid, but the moment something really bad happened, guys, you deal with it alone. That was an example. So being dependent also on outside is really not good. That's health. Another thing that's very important for me is education. One of the very aspects that we have been very proud of in the refugee camps or as Sahrawis is education. You have the Sahrawi representative here, you have Sahrawi artists, or you have me. It's really not thanks to American universities or Norwegian, it's thanks to education in the camps. I mean, at least that's my own credit to give to the refugee camps. But unfortunately, that also sector has been really effective. Any of you here worked as a teacher, or your husband or wife is a teacher? Just have your hands up. Yeah, someone work as teacher. So in the camps, what is happening that basically the teachers, they don't have any salary. So they are working as volunteer. And when you are Sinan, you are working as a teacher, but also you have a family to provide for, and there is no humanitarian aid. So what you do, you leave that job and you start working as a taxi driver or or open show. Second, UNICEF, they made a study in the camps, and they find out that in 2018 that 64% of the 36 primary school in the camps, they need rehabilitation and they need a new structure. And I visited the camps, and I was sitting there in the class, and I was like, oh my God, this is not safe, because you see the roof. But that's because I became Norwegian, it's like that Aikabra, But for the Sahrawis, I'm like, how you put the kids here? But I wanted the same type of school. But that's, that's for education. Another important aspect, especially for you, Article 2, that you have been working in Western Sahara for a long time. Despite all the challenges, the Polisario or, in the camps, they manage actually that people get education. But what is the point of education if you can't use it? So what happened, they came back to the camps, they put their diploma there, they put their dream next to them, they put about their expectation. There are no work, there are no training opportunity. And this is because here we are among family, but this is has created actually a feeling of frustration among the youth. They don't see any future. They don't see any, how do you say it, the light in the tunnel about their future. And of course, we know when you have young people, what are other consequences? There could be radicalization. There could be drug addiction, and also that's something scary for me to see. It actually causes that the young people, they lose faith in education. So there are dropouts in school. There hasn't been when I was going to school. Now you see that we don't want to be, in school. So, it's very negative. I'm sorry, but of course, there are some initiatives from Sahrawis who are trying to grow food. There is one of them. He's sitting here next to us, but it's still very, very tiny scale. So it doesn't really cover the need that Sahrawi needs.
Thank you. Dr. Zunes, Asria mentioned the media coverage, and we know that Western Sahara doesn't get a lot of attention. What do you think is the reason for this? And also, what could be done by the solidarity movements or the supporters, allies of Western Sahara and the cause to increase attention and media coverage?
It is very frustrating, as someone who's worked on this issue for decades, to see the lack of media attention. And just to give you an idea of how bad it is, I'm a visiting professor at the University of Gothenburg. I've been here in Sweden since January. And I have been interviewed about and asked to give public presentations about Western Sahara, about 6 or 8 times since coming here, which is more than I've been asked to do in the United States for the past 10 or 15 years. So it's you think it's bad here, it's worse in the United States, and yes, that's very frustrating, and I think part of it, frankly, is that Western Sahara does not quite fit the paradigm that many people in the West look at the Arab and Islamic world. I mean, here are people who are self-governing in a relatively democratic manner. This is an armed liberation group that has never engaged in terrorism. These are, on the one hand, devout, observant Muslims, but believe that Islam, is between the individual and God, not for the state to impose their interpretation on it. So the Polisario, Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, is secular in terms of its actual administration. They've never questioned Morocco's right to exist. They're very much, and women are in major positions of leadership, both within the Polisario, but also in the nonviolent resistance going on inside the occupied territory. And so again, this doesn't fit the stereotype of Arab nationalist struggles, and so if it doesn't fit the paradigm, it doesn't quite it's almost as if it doesn't exist. But I think that sort of underscores all the reason why it's important for us to talk about this. Because the West says they would like to have, why don't those Arab Muslim countries have more democracy, more rights for women, be more nonviolent, be at peace with their neighbor. And here are people who are trying to say, yes, we can do that. Give us a chance. Let us have our own little country here. And the West is saying, no, we're going to support this autocratic monarchy. Prevent you from showing the world what is possible. And so that that is why, again, it's so imperative that we push this thing. And I think, perhaps we could take advantage of the fact that so much of the world's attention is on Palestine, to show that, while certainly solidarity and support for the Palestinian people is as important as ever, to recognize that there are, that there's another occupied country, an occupied country that has not fallen into the traps that some elements of the Palestinian liberation struggle has unfortunately gone in terms of political extremism and terror and reactionary Islamist ideologies. That here are people who are doing it right. Here are people who are doing it the way they're supposed to do it. Why aren't we paying more attention to it?
Thank you. Asria, you have just finished a project called Khaymatna, where you have actually included 19 Sahrawi women. Would you like to tell us more about the whole resistance movement and the role and the women's role in the resistance movement?
So, Khaymatna, so that's Arabic word, and
Yeah.
it's translated to our tent.
Thank you.
And the tent has been a very central and important pillar for the Sahrawi culture and identity. And it's very funny how the West, since you speak about the West, they see the tent as something that it's, savage. I don't know, I can't come up with a word, but it's something that it's, not modern, not civilized. And while actually the tent is a very smart piece of architect or type of architect. And all the colonial power, both Spain before, they wanted to impose on the Sahrawi, they have to be civilized and stop living in the tent and live in houses. And Morocco as well attacking the Sahrawi's tent because it is a symbol of resistance. Morocco is very, very seriously, they are very sensitive to the tent. They see it as a threat because it is, for Sahrawis, it's a symbol of resistance at the same time of unity. I want you later on to go and check something in 2010 called Gdeim Zik. And Gdeim Zik, it was a peaceful protest in Western Sahara where over around 20,000 of Sahrawis in the occupied territories of Western Sahara, they established a protesting camp. So they built up Sahrawi tent. And a month later, Morocco burned it down and they arrest human rights defenders, and today they sit in prison and they are sentenced from 20 to 30 years in prison to life imprisonment. And because of that, Sinan, Morocco has imposed laws that Sahrawis should not put up their tent. If you do, you will be beaten up or you will be paid a fine. Sahrawis, they are, nomads. They like freedom. They like to be in open spaces. So they're not even allowed to put their tent. Today, there has been cracked down as well, where Moroccan forces, they just drive around and destroy the tents, and they burn them because they need people to take them down. So they are very stressed. Whenever they see tents, they think something, will happen and bring Sahrawis. That's just the importance of what Khayma means to Sahrawis. So Khaymatna is a multimedia archivism project. It is basically, physically, it's a tent, but it's a very mini version of the one that we have in the camps, the one that I grew up in. From outside, it's made from like kamba, which given from humanitarian aid. And why it's special than the other tent or other project is that I decided from inside, the interior is to make the interior made of malfa. You know, this what I'm wearing now is malfa for you guys. And these malfas are from human rights defenders from the occupied territories, women. So it's very authentic. It's like women sending their picture, sending their malfa. And with each malfa, you will find the name of the woman and the QR code. And the QR code will take you to their story, their biography. So I interviewed the story of this woman. So why this project is important? First, this is actually the first time that anyone documents the life of these human rights defenders. And that's, speaking about the media, one of the reasons as well there is no media, there's no attention, there is also no documentation. There are very few books, among them your book about Western Sahara in general, but there are no documentation of women resistance in Western Sahara. And it's also special because it's made by Sahrawi, which give you even deeper insights than if it was made by others. So the point from Khaymetna is that it will be space for dialogue for me, but also to contribute to let Sahrawis, people know more about Western Sahara. But let me go to the women, sorry. The women, when I interviewed them, as I said, I was born and I grew up in the camps, and like it's not strange for me what is happening in Western Sahara. But whenever I'm done with one interview, I cannot sleep at night because of the horror, because of the stories that is told of the women. Most activists and human rights defenders in Western Sahara, they are actually women. And these women, they are beaten up, they are harassed, they are sexually harassed on daily basis. But let me give some example. Female human rights defenders in Western Sahara, for example, journalists, they will be, of course, subjects for physical like violence, like beaten up or jail, but also Morocco use defamation and slandering against the Sahrawi female journalists. In Sweden or in Norway, if someone publishes your picture with bikini and says something about it, you're like, okay, whatever. It's not a big deal. But in the Sahrawi context, some of these women, they choose, it's their religious choice, it's their private choice to use malhfa, you know? And it's expected of Sahrawi women to have malhfa. So what does Morocco do? When they arrested a journalist, they will confiscate their phone, they take their phone, and then the Moroccan secret police, they will go and they download all the private pictures, you know, where you don't have it, like, you know. And then they have special websites, seriously special websites, just to write rumors and slandering, you know, where they, for example, will, I'm sorry for my language, they will say, look at this, Mariam or whatever, she's a whore, she's, you know. And this is to both to psychological torture, but also to weaken their credibility among their community. Another thing in the stories, you find the story of Sultana Khaya and her sister. Sultana has been here in Norway before, and she's very known, so I'm not gonna go through her story. But I will go through, in 2021, she has been under house arrest for 1 year and 7 months. And in this period, Sinan, she and her sister, they were raped a few times. So Morocco actually uses rape as a weapon in the conflict. Why I mention Sultana? Because all these years I have worked in Western Sahara, I interviewed women, they tell me either they have been raped or they know someone who has been raped or sexually raped, but they say, it's something I take with me to the grave. So I mentioned Sultana because she was the first one to speak, you know, publicly about it. And it's a horrific story. You know how they were raped? In the house arrest, it was her sister, and her 85 years old mother. It's an old lady. So what does Morocco do? The authority, the secret agent, and they always show up in the middle of night, like between 4 and 5 in the morning, from the roof, and they answer. So they blindfolded Sultana and her sister. They handcuffed them, you know, in the back, and they were raping them and sexually harassing them in front of their old mother. So they did not cover the mother. This is also psychology, to see your mother suffering about what is happening to you. And then there is one thing, I feel I spoke too long, but there is one thing that is very new to, not new, but it's used even more against the Sahrawi women, but also all human rights defenders. And I call it economical violence. So basically, Morocco is punishing anyone who is activist. Like if you are activist, you will never get a job. Sinan, do you have any family member in other place in Sweden? Where do you have them, for
They're
example?
spread out.
Yeah, let's say they are in
Malmö,
Gothenburg
yeah.
or Malmo.
Yeah.
So if you are active, all of a sudden you hear that your father in Malmo, he lost his job. Your sister who's studying medicine, she's no longer has a place, you know. So they put pressure on the activists via their families. No one can get any job. There is one of the women, her name is Layla, and Layla, she has really weak, how do you call it in English? Weak side? When you-
Eyesight.
yeah, so it's like, so she needs to have her glasses. She can't, she's basically blind without her glasses. And what Morocco police do, they know. So the first thing when she goes to demonstration, they attack her glasses. And she doesn't have a job, and she can't buy them, and it's only 200 euros. But it's still a lot for her. So it's really what's affecting the occupied territories, not actually the physical violence, but cutting all their source of income. To conclude, you know what the worst thing? Morocco just been elected as the president of the Human Rights Council. Can you imagine that? The country which actually opposes everything about human rights is a leader. And it's very serious development because both symbolically is important. Morocco can go with, you know, open shoulders, feeling we have given this legitimacy. And second, it has a practical. As president, Morocco actually can name the candidate for different working group and mechanism. And that's really, really bad development.
Thank you. Dr. Zunes, Asria touched upon the occupied territories and the situation for Sahrawis living in the occupied territories. You have been there.
Yeah.
What is your experience of the occupied territories?
I've been to 87 countries at this point, including former communist countries, including Iraq under Saddam, including Indonesia under Suharto, and I've never seen a worse police state than Moroccan-occupied Western Sahara. Human Rights Watch has routinely ranked Western Sahara as what they call among the worst of the worst, along with Saudi Arabia, North Korea, Eritrea, Turkmenistan, and Freedom House, an American-based NGO, ranks Western Sahara second only to Syria in terms of its denial of political rights. So yes, it is extremely, extremely severe. And the and I want to underscore how women are particularly targeted. It's because historically, not just Polisario policy, but culturally, Sahrawi women have had a lot more freedom than many women in that part of the world. They have equal rights to inheritance and divorce, to keep their maiden names. There's a if you travel from Morocco into the Sahrawi area, you just look in the street, you notice the body language of women is very different. Much less submissive, much more confident. And of course for the Moroccans that means they're uppity, and they need to show them, and who's boss here, and it's really been very disappointing that. The Morocco, especially since the current king succeeded his father about 25 years ago, that he's liberalized some things in Morocco itself, including some slight improvements in women's rights, and he gets all this praise, this great press in the West of this modernizer, this reformer, and Hillary Clinton, who's supposed to be this great feminist icon, was praising Morocco for its treatment, for its respect for women's rights and human rights in general. And so it is a. So I think this is actually an issue that those of us who want to bring more attention can really focus on. Is just how terrible the human rights situation is there, particularly in regard to women, and most more Europeans and I think more Americans as well have been to Morocco than any other Arab countries, and it's generally been a positive experience. I mean, Fez, Marrakesh, these beautiful cities. People generally have a very good feeling about it. But the fact is that we really do need to raise these issues about the political repression. We can look at Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. We don't have to take the word of Sahrawi activists. We can look at these these reputable human rights groups that don't take ideological stances, that evaluate human rights on an objective basis, regardless of the political alignment or the geopolitical alignment or the ideology or whatever of the country, and to really publicize these issues and challenge this myth of Morocco being a relatively liberal state in this regard, because I think even people who don't quite understand issues of international law and may not know the history, I mean, simply basic issues are human rights, or something that, at least in theory, should motivate people to support and express solidarity with the Sahrawis in their struggle.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
You
just
wanted to add something?
no, I just because there is you mentioned something this with about Hillary or praising Morocco for the feminism, and there is something that Morocco is doing, and Moroccan king, and that's like gender washing. We hear about greenwashing, and it's like gender washing, and Morocco is actually really bad. Morocco in total they have jailed more journalists than a whole North African country, and we have Libya. What is happening in Libya, and I was watching this seminar between Moroccan journalists, and one of them, he says something that's stuck in my head, and he said, we Moroccans, we suffer from the curse of the better neighbor. Because if you compare them with the rest of North African countries, you think, all of you are bad, but that person at least we could, cooperate with. And that's, it's also hard to challenge, especially Sweden. You are in Sweden, you are part of the EU. Like, you never come to EU say Morocco is bad. Nah, they need Morocco. So it's like you have to understand how Morocco is important in the communication to Western Sahara. But that was, I think, my... wanted to add on what Stephen said, this with the green,
So on a personal note, you have been speaking publicly about Western Sahara for such a long time, and often you actually bring your own personal story. How does that work for you? Always having to carry Western Sahara on a personal level almost.
I know. I say I know, it's like because you are touching right nerve, like if in Sahrawi context, and if it was only here, Sahrawi is like, oh, that's your duty, like, or you're like, you're not doing enough, it's never enough. But that's another conversation. When I was home last time, I looked at my siblings, both older than me and younger than me, and all of them, they had black hair. I have white hair already. And I'm like, I need to chill. But that's the thing. When I do presentation about Western Sahara, and I remember actually really hard, whenever I do presentation, because I speak about it, and I always tell people, I'm so sorry to be personal. It's hard to, to distance from me. And then that's when I talk like that, that's the most authentic. That's what people like. That's what people remember, Years ago, some people, my colleague Norwegian, he will tell me, Asria, we met someone and he said they remember you, because they remember, how you make them feel or whatever. I'm not saying I'm good. I'm good, no. I'm not saying good, but you get my point. But then it became too much, as you said. It's too much because you do many presentations. I do sometimes 5 a day in the morning and 2 in the evening. And imagine in all this, you get through all the emotions. I'm like, you feel angry, you feel sad, you miss your family because I live alone in Norway, and then you need to be professional, and then you have to catch the bus, and but all the time it's like this earthquake of emotions and all this. And then I became older and wiser, and I'm like, now I have to to take care of myself, as Norwegian said. And then I said, now I have to just do very plain facts. I go and speak. But it was not good either. It's not right. And then when we do feedback, they always say, especially for young people, they say, but it's so nice to meet someone who is from there. It's always this expression. It's always nice to meet that. It's not the same if a Norwegian come and say it. And I feel pressure because I'm like, I can. But to be honest, it's not easy, and it's not as but it's still maybe some people say I did it at the first because of duty. When I arrived to Norway, you know, growing up in the camps, I used to see foreigners coming to the camps, journalists with their camera, and I thought the whole world knew about Western Sahara. And then I come to Norway and I'm like, hi, Asria, and they're like, I'm from Western Sahara. And they're like, huh? It's a country. And then you feel this is duty. So it was that beginning out of a duty, you know? And then second, you just like, okay, I'm good at this. I like doing it. I can keep doing it. And then the third, but then you get really tired. We're just a human. And then at the third time, why I still do it, and what are the volunteers here? The volunteers for, do you have some volunteers with a mouse? No. Article 2, frivilliga? No. Praktikant. What are the praktikant? Yeah, what is the praktikant here? Up with your hands. Yeah, exactly. So your motivation, this is how you're going to find your motivation. All feelings actually can go away, but I think I'm doing this not because I'm Sahrawi, but it's you get angry. I'm angry of injustice. I'm angry of, you know, being totally forgotten about the world. You see what's happening now, Sweden position, or what is happening in Sweden. So I am tired and I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this again. But the moment I stand in front of people, the anger just gets into me. I start speaking about, you know, the land grab in Western Sahara, the human rights situation, and it's, you know, you come back. But I want to, can I give a tips for
sure.
Yeah? We have a podcast. I have a podcast about Western Sahara. It's called Sandfast. You should listen to it, okay? And I did interview with this British activist. She has been working in Western Sahara in over 30 years. 30 years. And she told me, you know, what I learned? She said Western Sahara has, in a way, impacted my life. Western Sahara was the reason I got divorced because she was never home in demonstration and doing all this. But then she said, now she danced tango, you know? And she's like, I have to put in my calendar all the time, I have to dance tango no matter what happened in Western Sahara. So yeah, to do it again and again, you should do something else in the side. The problem is, in my case, in case of Sania or Mohammed Suleiman, you know, like I'm coming to do something totally off, like let's say comedy or something, and I say, I'm Asria, and they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, Western Sahara is a occupied territory, you know? So you can't even, not even in, you know? And once I lied, I was from India, and the guy turned out to be from India, was not good. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I hope that was an answer. All of a sudden it became like psychology therapy with Sinan.
Thank you, Asria.
Sorry.
Dr. Zunes, occupation in itself is not unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have several examples of occupations. Actually, you mentioned the occupation of Palestine. We have the occupation of Ukraine taking all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara unique?
Well, Western Sahara is the largest non-self-governing territory in the world that has not been given the option of self-determination. There are, non-self-governing territory, kind of a fancy word for colony. It was a Spanish colony for many decades. And there have been some colonies which opted to remain part of the colonizing country. Puerto Rico in the case of the United States, and some of the French Caribbean islands in terms of France, but they're at least given the choice. And so in addition to being an occupied territory, that is country under foreign belligerent occupation, as the UN General Assembly and the most recent UN Secretary General has acknowledged, you do have this particular status. And pretty much every country has been given that choice. West Papua is kind of a in-between case, but this is what really makes it a very dangerous precedent, because if the international community officially accepts Morocco's so-called autonomy plan, just for the record, let me mention it's kind of pretty phony. It's pretty vague in terms of what it entails. And when we have centralized governments promising autonomy to some region, they don't usually work out so well. Think of Ethiopia and Eritrea, Serbia and Kosovo. But most critically, the autonomy proposal, which again the king could overrule, according to Article 19 of the Moroccan Constitution with the stroke of a pen, that even if it was a reasonable autonomy proposal, it would still be wrong because it rules out the option of independence. Again, the people of Western Sahara vote to become integrated with Morocco, either completely or as an autonomous territory under Morocco. That's their right. But they have to also have the option of independence. And if that is denied to them, it would be the first time since the founding of the United Nations in 1945, first time since, so the basic principles we think of in international law, have been codified, that a country has been allowed to expand its territory by force. And so it is critically important that we fight for that right of self-determination, because it's not just about the people of Western Sahara. I mean, that's important enough. I mean, they deserve our solidarity regardless. But it's really, frankly, the question: what kind of world do we live in, where you recognize the right of self-determination, or is it a world we recognize the right of conquest? So really, it's not an exaggeration to say the international legal order is at stake here. That it's really, really critical that we get involved in the push for self-determination. Again, to bring back Ukraine. I've been to Africa 3 times since the Russian invasion, and almost every time that Ukraine comes up, and I basically am defending the Western position on Ukraine, almost everybody I've talked to, ranging from taxi drivers to foreign ministry officials, say, what about Western Sahara? Because of the Western the position on Western Sahara, they say, oh, you're not supporting Ukraine because of international law. This is just geopolitics. This is just about Western hegemony. Because if you really cared about international law, you would demand the end of the Moroccan occupation. So this is really hurting Western credibility, because the West has really been trying to get more support in the global South to fight Russian irredentism and Russian imperialism, and this really hurts our credibility. And so and similarly, the West says, oh, we can't demand an Israeli withdrawal and have Palestine self-determination because some of them use terrorism. Their leadership is divided. Some of them don't recognize Israel's right to exist. They're not democratic. Well, Western Sahara, they've never used terrorism. They recognize Morocco. They're relatively democratic. They have a unified leadership, and we're not supporting them either. So what are we telling the Palestinians? Even if you do everything right, we'll probably support your occupier anyway, because that's what we're doing in Western Sahara. So this is why, this is what, I care about the Sahrawis, for their own right, as they do any people. But what really brings me passionate about this is that, really, the international legal order is at stake here. And that's why we really need to get involved. And I think this is also a tool that can broaden the movement, beyond this core group of folks who care about solidarity with the global South. It goes beyond the kind of folks that work with Article 12 and with our comrades and other struggles. This is something that, in theory, we should have very broad support, across the political spectrum. So putting out that this really is, in many ways, the most important single test case regarding these fundamental international legal principles.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I think all of us would have liked to stay with you for longer. But I hope it's okay if there are any questions. People can just ask you when we're done here. Thank you all for coming. And we would also like to thank our partners, Svenska Västsahara-kommittén and also Björk och Frihet. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.